Confidence is not a gift. It's a muscle. That's the truth most people don't want to hear, but it's the truth they need. We grow up believing that some people are just born confident. The ones who speak louder, stand taller, laugh easily in rooms full of strangers. But that's surface. That's not confidence. That's showmanship. Real confidence, the kind that holds steady when things go sideways, is something you build. It's something you earn, and just like building muscle, it takes deliberate effort, consistency, and a whole lot of discomfort. Think about what it takes to grow stronger physically. You don't walk into a gym once, do a couple of push-ups, and come out with a six-pack. No, you sweat, you strain, you tear down the muscle fibers so they can rebuild stronger. You show up when you're sore, when you don't feel like it, when progress is invisible. Confidence works the same way. It gets built in the places no one sees, in the small daily choices, the internal battles, the quiet victories. Every time you take on something uncomfortable, speaking up in that meeting, stepping into a new room alone, trying something that scares you, you're doing a rep. You're giving yourself proof that you can handle it, that you don't need to be perfect to be powerful, that you can be scared and still move forward. That proof matters. It's what turns shaky self-belief into grounded self-trust. People often confuse confidence with the absence of fear, but in reality, confident people just have more practice acting in spite of fear. They've stretched themselves again and again. They've failed, and more importantly, they've gotten back up. They've had days where nothing went right, where their plans crumbled, where they were humiliated, rejected, overlooked, and they chose to keep going. That's a heavy rep, but it builds resilience. It teaches you that your identity isn't tied to a single moment, a single mistake, or someone else's opinion. The key here is understanding that confidence isn't something waiting for you on the other side of success. It doesn't show up after you've already proven yourself. It starts in the decision to show up in the first place. It begins in the practice of being willing to look foolish, to fail forward, to take the shot even when you're not sure it'll land. When you do that enough, your brain rewires. You start trusting your capacity to grow through challenge, not avoid it. You become less dependent on external validation because you've got your own track record to lean on. Every confident person you admire, whether it's a leader, an artist, an athlete, got there by putting in reps behind closed doors. They didn't wait for motivation, they practiced discipline. They did the hard things when no one was clapping. They didn't just study the moves, they made the moves. And over time, their belief grew, not because someone told them they were good, but because they proved to themselves that they wouldn't quit. That's how the muscle is built. There's something powerful about becoming the kind of person who can rely on themselves, not in a hardened, isolated way, but in a rooted, steady way. It doesn't mean you don't need support or connection. It means your sense of worth isn't constantly up for debate. You've seen yourself go through fire and come out refined, not reduced. So if you want confidence, real, durable confidence, stop chasing the feeling and start committing to the reps. Set small goals and keep them. Stretch yourself into the discomfort zone every day, even if just a little. Build the habit of action, not perfection. Watch how quickly the muscle grows when you stop waiting and start working. And just like in the gym, progress might not be obvious after the first week. But give it time. Stay consistent. Stack the reps, because one day you'll look back and realize you didn't find confidence. You became it. Confidence begins with clarity, not with loud words, not with posture, not with charm. Before you can ever feel grounded in who you are, you have to know who that person actually is. That's where it starts. You can't walk into a room with conviction if deep down you're not sure of the ground you're standing on. That kind of confidence isn't about pretending. It's about alignment. It's about knowing your values, your purpose, your standards, and living from that place every day. We live in a world filled with noise. People telling you who you should be, what you should want, what success looks like, what happiness looks like. Social media floods you with curated images of other people's lives, and before you know it, you're measuring your worth against someone else's highlight reel. That disconnection from your own truth is what kills confidence at the root. Because when you're constantly shifting to fit someone else's expectations, you lose the ability to trust your own instinct. And trust is the foundation of confidence. Knowing yourself is not some abstract feel. Good idea, it's a discipline. It's the hard work of being honest with yourself. It's asking the tough questions. What do I believe in, really? What am I willing to stand for, even if it costs me? What kind of life do I want to build, not because it looks good from the outside, but because it feels right on the inside? When you take the time to get clear on these things, everything else becomes simpler. Decisions are easier. Boundaries are firmer. Your direction is steady. You don't need to have all the answers about your future, but you need to understand your core. That internal compass becomes your guide, especially when things get uncertain, and they always do. People often say they want confidence, but what they're really searching for is a sense of peace with themselves. That kind of peace doesn't come from accomplishments or praise. It comes from congruence when your actions align with your beliefs. When you're not performing a version of yourself for others, but simply living in your own skin, truthfully and unapologetically. The thing is, knowing yourself doesn't mean you'll always feel sure. There will be moments of doubt, of confusion, of course. But when you've done the work of self-discovery, you'll have something solid to return to. You'll have your own values to measure decisions against, rather than being blown in the wind by every opinion that crosses your path. This self-knowledge also changes how you respond to failure. When you don't know who you are, failure feels personal. It feels like confirmation that you're not good enough. But when you're rooted in your identity, failure becomes feedback. It's not a reflection of your worth, it's information. And that's a powerful shift. You can face rejection, setbacks, criticism, and not be shattered by it, because you're not depending on those things to tell you who you are. Confidence becomes sustainable when it's not tied to results, image, or applause. It becomes part of your foundation when it's built on self. Understanding. That's why clarity is so essential. Without it, you'll always feel like you're playing a role, hoping no one sees through the mask. With it, you're not performing, you're just being. And people can sense that. They can feel when someone is operating from a place of authenticity. You want to be someone who can walk into any situation, whether it's a boardroom, a first date, a job interview, or a moment of crisis, and stay grounded. That grounding doesn't come from pretending to be bulletproof. It comes from knowing who you are, what you believe, and what matters to you. That's clarity, that's your edge, so if you're chasing confidence, start by chasing clarity. Get quiet. Turn down the volume of everyone else's opinions. Listen to your own voice. Be brutally honest about your fears, your desires, your patterns. Get to know the person behind the persona, because when you truly understand who you are, not who you're trying to be, you'll stop needing permission to be confident. And once you have that clarity, confidence becomes the natural result. not something you force, not something you fake, just something you live. Confidence isn't something you magically think into existence. It's something you earn, and the way you earn it is through action. Every single time you take a step forward, especially when it's uncomfortable, you are building a record. You are writing evidence, and over time that evidence stacks up and becomes your confidence. Not the kind that shows up when things are going well, but the kind that stays with you when everything feels uncertain. That kind of confidence is not about pretending to be fearless. It's about proving to yourself that you can move forward, even when you are. A lot of people wait around for the feeling of confidence to show up before they act. They think, once I feel ready, I'll go for it. Once I believe in myself, then I'll try. But that's backwards. That's like waiting to be in shape before you go to the gym. Confidence is not the starting point, it's the result. It comes after you do the thing. You act first. You feel confident later. And the more you act, the more you prove to yourself that you are capable, resilient, and adaptable. Action is the antidote to doubt. When you're stuck in your head, overthinking every move, wondering if you're good enough or if you'll fail, the best thing you can do is take a step, any step. Because even a small action disrupts that loop. It creates momentum. It reminds you that you're not helpless and you're not frozen. You're moving, and movement is power. There's a reason the most confident people you meet tend to also be the ones who consistently take action. They don't wait until they feel like it. They just keep showing up. They try, they stumble, they learn. They keep going. And because of that, they carry a kind of quiet certainty. Not that everything will go perfectly, but that they'll be able to handle whatever comes. That certainty doesn't come from theory. It comes from experience. It comes from being in the arena, not watching from the stands. One of the most powerful ways to earn confidence is by keeping promises to yourself. That might sound simple, but it's one of the deepest forms of self-respect. When you say you're going to do something, wake up early. Finish that project, take the risk, have the conversation, and you follow through. You build internal trust. And internal trust is what allows you to stand tall, even when things around you are unstable. You know you've got your own back. You know you can rely on yourself. That's not arrogance. That's earned security. And it's not just about the big actions either. It's the small ones repeated over time that really shape your identity. Getting up when your alarm goes off. Choosing the uncomfortable but necessary conversation. Showing up on the days you don't feel like it. Those choices compound. Each one is a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. And the more you act in alignment with your goals, your values, and your higher self, the more confident you become, not because someone told you you're doing great, but because you know it. That's why it's important not to obsess over the result. Focus on the action. Confidence doesn't come from winning. It comes from showing up. Sometimes you'll win, and sometimes you'll learn, but either way, you acted. And the act of doing is what matters most. That's what builds the unshakable kind of confidence, the kind that doesn't fall apart when the outcome isn't what you hoped for. When you live in a mindset of motion, you stop waiting to feel perfect. You stop hesitating for the green light that never comes. Instead, you realize that confidence isn't waiting down the road. It's right here, waiting to be built, one action at a time. So take the step, make the move, speak up, risk the failure, lean into discomfort, because the more you do, the more you gather proof that you are capable, no matter how you feel in the moment. And that proof, that's how confidence becomes who you are, not just how you feel. Rejection is one of the most misunderstood forces in life. Most people see it as failure, a sign they're not good enough, not talented enough, not worthy. But in truth, rejection is one of the most powerful tools for building confidence, if you're willing to shift how you see it. Rejection is not the opposite of success, it's a part of it. It's not something to fear or avoid. It's something to face, to feel, and most importantly, to use. Every time you get rejected, you're handed a choice. You can take it personally, let it confirm your worst fears about yourself, and shrink. Or you can see it as feedback, as fuel, as proof that you're in the game. Because the only people who never get rejected are the ones who never try. The ones who play it safe, stay silent, and never put themselves in a position to be told no. That kind of life might feel comfortable, but it doesn't build confidence. It builds a cage. Confidence is forged in fire, and rejection is part of that fire. When you experience it, it hurts. Of course it does. It stings your pride, rattles your sense of worth, and makes you question yourself. But that discomfort is also what makes it valuable. Because when you move through that pain and keep going, you discover something crucial. That rejection didn't break you. It didn't define you. It didn't stop you. And once you realize that, you stop fearing it. That's when confidence takes root. Some of the most successful, grounded, unshakable people you'll ever meet have one thing in common. They've been told no more times than most. They've been overlooked, underestimated, laughed at, ignored, and yet they kept showing up. They used those no's as stepping stones, not stop signs. Rejection didn't crush their spirit, it sharpened it. Because each time it happened, they learned how to separate their worth from the outcome. They understood that getting rejected doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means it wasn't the right fit, the right time, or the right audience. That's all. If you want real confidence, you have to become resilient in the face of rejection. You have to expect it. Not in a pessimistic way, but in a prepared way. You train your mind to understand that rejection isn't personal. It's part of the process. It's feedback. Sometimes it reveals where you need to grow. Sometimes it points you in a better direction. And sometimes it's just a random no. In a world full of variables you can't control. But here's the secret. Every rejection is a signal that you tried. You asked, you stepped forward, you put yourself out there. That alone is a win, even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment. Because the alternative, staying silent, hiding, avoiding risk, that doesn't protect you. It erodes you. Slowly, quietly, you lose touch with your courage, your creativity, your voice. Playing small might save you from rejection, but it also steals your potential. There's strength in being the person who can handle a no and still keep going. It means you trust yourself more than the outcome. It means you don't let the world's temporary response define your long, firm direction. And that is where unshakable confidence begins. In the space where you've been hit, but you're still standing. Where the door closed, but you knocked on another. Where you didn't let one opinion become your identity. The people who grow the fastest, the ones who evolve and elevate, are the ones who collect rejections like trophies. They see each one as proof that they're reaching, stretching, daring. And that mindset transforms everything. Because when you're not afraid to be rejected, you're free, you're dangerous in the best way. You'll speak up more, try more, risk more, and with that comes growth. So let rejection do its job. Let it hurt. Let it humble you, but then let it build you. Let it be the thing that separates you from the ones who quit, the ones who waited for certainty, the ones who chose comfort over courage. Because the ones who rise are the ones who learned how to take a hit and keep moving forward. That's confidence. not because they were never rejected, but because they were, and they refused to be reduced by it. Confidence without consistency is just noise. Real confidence, the kind that lasts, the kind that doesn't get shaken every time something goes wrong, is built through discipline. Through showing up again and again, whether you feel like it or not. Through doing what you said you'd do, even when the excitement fades and nobody's watching. That's what separates people who just look confident from the ones who are confident. Discipline is the invisible engine behind every strong, grounded, and authentic person you admire. The truth is, confidence doesn't grow from occasional big wins. It grows from steady, often unglamorous effort. It's built in the early mornings when you'd rather stay in bed, in the quiet evenings when you're tired but choose to finish what you started. It's in the 100 tiny decisions that no one applauds, choosing the hard conversation, committing to the plan, practicing your craft when no one's asking. These moments don't make headlines, but they're what shape you, and over time they become your proof. Your track record. The reason you can walk into a room with your head held high isn't because you're the loudest voice. It's because you know you've done the work. We live in a culture that celebrates intensity, hustle, extremes, big leaps. But confidence is built through consistency, not intensity. It's easy to be motivated for a week, maybe even a month. But what happens when life gets hard, when your emotions aren't playing along? That's where discipline kicks in. Discipline is the structure that carries you when motivation is gone. And the more you practice it, the more dependable you become to yourself. Confidence built on discipline is solid because it comes from integrity. You know what that means. It means your words and your actions line up. You say you'll do something, and you follow through. You commit, and then you deliver, not perfectly, but faithfully, and that builds internal trust. When you can trust yourself to follow through, you don't need constant reassurance from the outside. You've already earned your own respect. Discipline also teaches you patience. In a world that chases instant results, the disciplined person plays the long game. They understand that mastery, whether in a skill, a mindset, or a goal, takes time. Confidence doesn't come from shortcuts. It comes from understanding the process and staying with it. Day after day, step by step, you stop being swayed by short-term setbacks because you're focused on long-term outcomes. You stop reacting impulsively and start moving deliberately. That changes the way you show up. You're less desperate, less easily rattled, more rooted. Another benefit of discipline is that it removes the need for perfection. When you're consistent, you don't have to get everything right every time. You just have to keep showing up, and that gives you freedom. You stop putting pressure on yourself to impress or perform, because you know your worth isn't hanging on one single outcome. You've built something stronger, a foundation that can withstand mistakes, pressure, failure. You become durable. And that's where true confidence lies. Most people want to feel confident, but they don't want to do what it takes to earn it. They want the glow without the grind, but discipline isn't punishment, it's self-respect in motion. It's choosing today what will build you into the kind of person you want to be tomorrow. Every time you choose discipline, you're sending a message to yourself. I matter, my goals matter, my growth matters. That message compounds. That's what builds belief, and the best part, discipline is available to anyone. You don't need talent. You don't need connections. You don't need perfect circumstances. All you need is a decision to begin, to continue, to stay in the game when it gets uncomfortable. The more you do that, the more confident you become, because you're no longer waiting for some external sign to tell you you're ready. You've already proven it to yourself. So if you want to build unshakable confidence, stop chasing the feeling and start choosing discipline. Pick something small and show up for it. Keep the promises you make to yourself. Build habits that align with your goals. And most importantly, don't break the streak. Let consistency be your strength. Because over time, you won't just act confident, you'll become the kind of person who deserves to be. Confidence without humility turns into arrogance, but confidence with humility becomes something powerful, not just impressive, but deeply grounded and magnetic. Because the most unstoppable kind of confidence doesn't come from needing to prove anything to anyone. It comes from knowing who you are, and at the same time knowing that you're not above growth, not beyond learning, not immune to feedback. That balance is what separates true confidence from insecurity in disguise. There's this idea floating around that confident people always have to be the loudest in the room, that they need to dominate conversations, always be right, never show weakness. But that's not real confidence, that's armor. That's the performance of someone who hasn't learned how to be comfortable with not knowing. Humble confidence, on the other hand, doesn't need to shout. It listens, it observes, it stays curious, and that curiosity is what keeps it growing. True confidence is quiet because it has nothing to prove. When you know what you bring to the table, you don't have to announce it every time you walk into a room. You can hold your ground without demanding attention. You can admit when you're wrong without losing face. You can celebrate others without feeling threatened. That kind of humility isn't weakness, it's strength in its most secure form. Think about the people you respect most, not just the ones who impress you, but the ones who inspire you. They're usually not the ones flexing their ego every 5 minutes. They're the ones who carry themselves with calm assurance. They don't pretend to have all the answers. They're comfortable saying, "I don't know, but I'll find out." They're open to learning, open to feedback, open to change, and that openness is exactly what allows them to grow beyond the rest. Humility also protects you from complacency, because the moment you think you've arrived, you stop pushing yourself. You stop listening, you start assuming. And when you assume you've got it all figured out, life has a way of humbling you real fast. The people who continue to rise, to evolve, to succeed over the long haul, they never stop being students. They might be confident, but they're also teachable. They ask better questions, they listen longer, and because of that, they get better, not just in skill, but in character. There's something incredibly powerful about someone who's both confident and humble. You trust them more, you listen to them more. You want to follow them, work with them, learn from them. Why? Because they don't just make it about themselves. Their presence doesn't feel like a performance. It feels real, grounded, human. That's the kind of confidence that draws people in instead of pushing them away. And here's the thing. Humility doesn't mean you downplay your worth. It doesn't mean you shrink or play small. It means you understand your value without needing to dominate. You can own your strengths and your flaws in the same breath. You can lead without ego. You can grow without shame. That's what makes you unstoppable, because you're not operating from a fragile place of needing approval. You're operating from a steady place of knowing your worth, while still being open to more. The most resilient kind of confidence is the kind that welcomes correction, that says, "I know I'm capable, but I also know I can be better." That duality of believing in yourself while staying open to feedback is what sharpens you. It keeps you adaptable, relevant, respected. It builds depth in who you are, not just what you do. When you combine confidence with humility, you stop fearing mistakes. You stop needing to have every answer. You don't see failure as a threat to your identity, you see it as a lesson. And that shift creates freedom, freedom to try, freedom to grow, freedom to lead without performing. You become someone who's not just impressive on the surface, but trusted at the core. So if you want your confidence to last, anchor it in humility. Let it be strong but soft, bold but teachable, certain but curious, because the moment you stop trying to prove how much you know, you create space to actually learn more. And that's the paradox of humble confidence. The less you need to prove it, the more powerful it becomes.